Beitza Daf Gimel Amud Beis. The Gemara brings a brisa and introduces it with the word Mesave. 7 lines down from the top of the page, just towards the end of the line. And starts going through halachas of Beitza, both on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Keep going. Echad Beitza.
Echad Beitza.
Shenolda b'Shabbos.
Shenolda b'Shabbos. Echad Beitza Shenolda b'Yom Tov.
Which means?
We're talking about an egg that was born on Shabbos, or an egg that was born on Yom Tov.
Either one.
Either one.
What? We're not allowed
to carry it.
To move it.
Move it.
And even if you have a good reason. Lo. You're not allowed to what?
Cover the kli.
With it.
With it.
Right? To use it as like a bottle stopper or something. And neither. Not to what?
To cover the...
No. Lismoch.
To lean.
To another support. With it, the karei hamita, the
legs
of the bed, right? Sometimes you can have a leg that's shorter, so maybe you'd want to support it with an egg. There's a special way of positioning the egg where it won't break the egg. And there's also, maybe wants to raise up the entire level of the bed by putting an egg under each leg. Again, if you position the egg correctly, it won't break. So, can you do that on Shabbos or Yom Tov?
No.
No. This is one of the things you can't do. You could have just said we're not allowed to be metaltal. That would cover everything. But it seems that there's a havamina that if you do something constructive, like you make it into like part of the kli or part of the this, it would be mutter. We say no. Because when Yom Tov came in, it wasn't yet in existence. It was only born on Yom Tov or born on Shabbos. So the fact that you can use it doesn't give it a status of a kli. It's still muksa. And what? You could, what? Aval. Kaife.
No, it's a kli.
You're allowed to what?
To cover the kli.
Cover it.
Cover it.
With
cover
a
the
kli.
Egg. Cover the egg.
Right. So you can't use the egg, or certainly can't move the egg for anything, but you can protect the egg. What's the chiddush of that? Because when I'm moving this cup to protect the egg, I'm moving the cup for the sake of muksa. Are I allowed to move a cup to protect muksa? Yes. That's what this Tana is saying. But there is another Tana, which we'll see later, a Reb Nechemia, who would not have allowed you to do such a thing. Okay, let's continue. That's why you can put a kli upon it, in order that what? Lo tishaver. It shouldn't
break.
Right. That's what you're allowed to do. You're allowed to protect the egg from breaking. Okay, now those are 2 halachas, more like muksa type of halachas. Now a third halacha in the brisa, which is going to be important for our Gemara. What?
A
suffix about what? This egg that was born on Yom Tov is going to be asur. So the pashut pshat is, what does it mean, a suffix about this egg? We don't know if it was born on Yom Tov or not.
Yeah.
So if I knew it was born on Yom Tov, it's asur. What if I don't know? It's only a suffix. Do I have to be machmir? It says, yes, I have to be machmir, it's asur. But that's going to cause a big stir. The Gemara is going to try to bring a proof from this that what? When do we say a suffix? You have to be machmir, normally only if the suffix is in a halacha, which is what? Midoraisa. So that would almost imply that a beitza shenolda b'yom tov is an isser deraisa. That's going to be problematic according to certain of the Manda Omrim that we've been discussing till now. Not everybody says it's Deraisa, right? Many people hold it's only Derabanan. So why would you have to be Machmer and a Safik Derabanan L'Kula? Okay, that will be asked later on. Now, last halacha in the Mishnah, in the Brisa, and if what? This egg that was born on Yom Tov got mixed up with other eggs that weren't born on Yom Tov, what do we say? They're all what? Asur. And that means we don't say what? What would you think to say? Like when meat falls into milk.
You might think it's batal barov.
That's right. Let it be batal barov. There is such a din as bittul. In fact, it's in Parshas Mishpatim. This week's Parsha. Acharei Rabim Lahatos. You always incline after the Rabim, after the Rov. Rov is a din d'oraisa. You like to follow Rov. So how come, like you don't say bittul barov? That's going to be a question, right? But we already know that there are certain rules, midrabanan at least, when we say don't follow Rov, right? So maybe it falls into that category. But anyhow, okay, that's not the major question, but it will become a question once we talk about the real question. The real question is, why is the case of Safik Asr? Beitz Shnol Yom Tov. Is that an Isser D'Oraisa or an Isser D'Rabbanan?
That is an Isser D'Oraisa.
According to Rabbah.
According
to all the other Manda Omrim. So that's going to be the major question. How come, according to all the other ones who say it's not D'Oraisa, why would the Brisa say Sveika Asura? Yeah. Let's go on now. We'll see the actual question inside the Gemara. Bishlema. Everything goes well according to Rabbah. Because he said, Mishum Hachana. His whole shita was that the egg is only usher because of what's called Hachana de Rabbah. A special kind of problem of Hachana called the Hachana de Rabbah. Remember where we learned it from? From the pasuk in Beshalach about the mun.
Yeah.
It says V'heichinu es asher yaviu.
Yes.
You have to prepare beforehand what you're going to eat on Shabbos or Yom Tov. And if it's born on, right, it's not Muchan beforehand, then it's Muksa D'Oraisa, Rashi calls it. So that's called Hachana D'Rabbah, right? So the Beitz Shnol Yom Tov or Beitz Shnol B'Shabbos, according to that, is what? Is an Isser what? D'Oraisa. So then, Havi Sveika D'Oraisa. Then the suffix about that will be called the suffix D'Oraisa. And what's the rule? V'chol. Oh. So that makes sense if the Brisa is going according to Rabbah. But again, we would theoretically need all of the shitas of the Amoraim to be mistader with this Brisa. Right? You can't say the Brisa is going all according to like Rabbah. What does that make the other Amoraim? Are they wrong? They say that the Yisr is not the Brisa. The Yisr is only midrabanan. Gezerah, a place of Paris and Noshrim, or Mashkim Shazava, whatever it is, it's an Yisr D'Rabbanan. So why would it be Asr if it's just a suffix? Ella. Mishum Gezerah. They say the egg of Nola B'Yom Tov is only Asr Mishum. Because of a gezerah, either of mashkim shazavu or peres hanoshrim, it's included in those gezeras. So it's only what? Havis sveika d'Rabbanan. Then this suffix is only a suffix d'Rabbanan. It's like a suffix d'Rabbanan. And what do we say? V'chol. That's right. So therefore, how come this Brisa is saying the suffix of these eggs is going to be Asr? Why? Suffix D'Rabbanan L'Kula. Good kasha? Very good kasha. So the Gemara says a chiddush that what? Omer lay, or some people I guess do have it, don't have it. The answer is
Amalai Sefer
Asa'an.
the Sophic truth.
Okay, so what does that mean? This Seifa, which means this whole part of the brisa that says that Safik is Asur, that part is what? Asa'an brings us to a new place. We're not in the same thing anymore. It's like bringing us into a new halacha. So we're not talking about Beis Shalom L'Biyam Tov anymore. When it says Safik Asur, it doesn't mean Beis Shalom L'Biyam Tov. Safik about Beis Shalom L'Biyam Tov. It's bringing us to a whole new subject of what? The Safik Treifa. Right?
Yep.
And Rashi says Safik Treifa means Safik. No, Rashi.
The Sophic Treifa.
Yeah.
The Sophic Treifa is Sophic Nalda Tarnagolis. So if something was born from a Tarnagolis, Treifa. Loud beyond to come.
Okay, I want to phrase it a bit differently. Safik Nolda Tarnagolis Treifa. I don't have a suffix that was born from a Tarnagolis. I know it was born from a Tarnagolis. It's not Safik Nolda Tarnagolis. I know it was born from a Tarnagolis. It's Safik Nolda Tarnagolis Treifa. I have a suffix that was born from a Treifa Tarnagolis. It was born from a Tarnagolis, no question. This egg came from a Tarnagolis. It's a chicken egg. But did it come out of a chicken that was a healthy chicken? Or a treifa chicken? That's the suffix, says the Gemara. It's a whole new subject. It has nothing to do with being born on Yom Tov. It's just a new question. If I have a suffix about an egg, what's my suffix? I came out of a Tarnagolis, but I don't know if that Tarnagolis was healthy or not. Right?
Yep.
So therefore what? Rashi says,
since already talking about the Isser Beitza,
therefore the Brisa chose to talk also about this case of Safik Treifa. Even though switching subjects in the middle. It's a bit strange to be switching the subject in the middle, Rashi's saying. But how does he get away with it? How do they get away with switching the subject? Rashi says because the subject is eggs. Okay, and once we're talking about eggs, we want to mention another case where there's halach about eggs. This one happens to be nothing to do with Yom Tov. It's only a question of an egg was born to a Tarnagolis. You don't know if it was treifa or not. Okay, but Rashi says, what business do we have talking about that in the middle of the Brisa started talking about Beis Shalom L'Biyam Tov. All of a sudden we're switching to some other subject. Rashi says, yes, we're allowed. We're allowed because it's all about beitzim anyways. Just that's the main subject, beitzim. So we're talking about beitzim, we switch to this other question about beitzim. Okay, now, so the Gemara says, back to the Gemara. So we're talking about Safik Treifa, all of a sudden. So Ihachi, if that's really true, that the third halacha, when it says Sveika Asur, means Safik Treifa is Asur. And by the way, why is Safik Treifa Asur? Is that a Safik D'Oraisa or Safik D'Rabbanan?
Safik D'Oraisa.
Safik D'Oraisa. Right, so you have to throw that in. How do we answer the question? The answer is because if it was talking about Safik born by Yom Tov, we said according to Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yitzchak, that's a Safik D'Rabbanan. It should have been L'Kula. But if we say we're switching in the middle to talking about a Safik Treifa, well, to eat treif is a Shiloh D'Oraisa, right? The Torah says don't eat treif. So to eat an egg even from a treifa thing would be an Issa D'Oraisa. So a Safik, whether it came from a treifa, would be a Safik D'Oraisa. So then it makes sense why it's saying Safik is Asur, why we're Machmir. Okay, but, says the Gemara, Ihachi, that if we're really talking about what, this new case about Safik treifa.
Safik deraisa.
Ihachi.
Seifa.
Ema seifa. Let me say the very last halacha in that brisa. You know what the last halacha in the brisa is? Nisarva.
Elef.
Kulan asuros. Right? It said whatever egg we're talking about, it said if it gets mixed up in 1,000 other eggs, then the egg is what? All of them are asur. Right? And we said there's no bittul. We should have said bittul, but there's no bittul for some reason, right? So the Gemara says, what about that halacha? You just told me we were talking about a treifa, a safek treifa, and that gets mixed up now with 1,000 other eggs. You're telling me they're all asur? That there's no din of bittul?
Yeah.
But that's shver because I amras b'shleima.
All goes well
If you say that what?
Safik yomtov.
Safik chol. If we're going back to the question of a basis shenoldu b'yomtov, and the safik means safik yomtov, safik chol. Havi davar. So then it turns out to be a davar. Yeshiva. Remember we spoke about this once before?
You can wait till after yomtov.
That's right. So then we have a rule midrabanan. They call davar. Sheyesh matirim. Right. The Chazal took away the din of bittul. Rashi says why? Because why rely on bittul right now when you can just wait a few hours and not have to rely on bittul? Right? Imagine that bittul, even though the Torah says there's such a thing as bittul, but it's a little bit b'di'evet. I know the isser's in there. Right? The Torah says I can rely on it, but it's a bit b'di'evet. I'm relying on bittul, but I know there's isser inside there. Right? So then if you look at it that way, then you understand why the Chazal would step in and say, you know what, but if you could wait a few hours, isn't that better? You want to take, there's no isser, then there won't be any isser. So Chazal made a rule, if it's davar sheish matirim, then if you just wait a little while, it'll be mutter without any bittul, so then don't rely on bittul, wait instead. Do it lechatchila, right? Like a mensch. Okay, so, but that's only true if we're talking about Beishan Shanol B'Yamtiv. Because I don't know if it's born on Yamtiv. I don't know if it's born on Chol. So then I say, I'll wait a few hours and it'll be okay, and I'll just eat it then. Okay?
Yeah.
Good. But if what? Ela'i Amres Safik Treifa. Like you wanted to say that the third halacha switched horses in the middle, and now we're talking about Safik Treifa, and that's why Safik D'Oraisa L'Chumra. But if it's really Safik Treifa, that's not a davar sheish matirim. Right? A treif animal, you're not going to be able to eat in 2 hours. Just wait 2 hours and eat the treif animal. No, there's no such thing. Right?
Yeah.
So since it's not a davar sheish matirim, it's a davar she'ein lo matirim. It's a thing that if it's really usher, it's usher forever. Then what?
It's a batel.
It's batel baruba. Then it should be batel barov. Right? There's no reason to push off the bittul and not rely on bittul when there's no time later that's going to be better. There's no better time. It's never going to be better. So Torah said you can rely on bittul. The Rabbanan wouldn't stop you from relying on bittul in this case. So we're sort of stymied. If you say the third halakha is talking about Beis Shnol B'Yom Tov and the suffix is whether it was born on Yom Tov or not, then why does it say it's asur? Suffix to Rabbanan L'Kul according to Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak. But if you say it's talking about Safek Treifa, then the fourth halacha doesn't make sense. Why would we say there, the Elef is lo batal? Why not rely on bittul?
Yeah.
It's not a davar sheish materium. It's a thing that will always be asur. Treifa is always asur.
We should rely on bittul.
We rely on bittul. So something strange is going on over here. So the Gemara answers. The chitema.
Say beitza cheshuva. Beitza cheshuva.
Below.
Batla.
Okay, so that's a new thing now. Just like we said, there's such a thing as davar sheish matirim. The Rabbanan stepped in and said, "Don't rely on bittul." Right? There are other cases where the Rabbanan say, "Don't rely on bittul." Okay. One of them is where the thing that you want to be batal is a davar chashuv. Right? And there's a bit of a spora to it as well. I mean, things so chashuv, it doesn't get... It's like, imagine if I told your wife's diamond ring fell into the garbage, right? Would you say, okay, it's batal, forget about it?
No.
No, you like, burrow through the whole thing because it's very important to you, right? So in a certain sense, there's a svora that something so chashuv, it can't be batal because you don't want to lose it. It's something that it stands out, as it were. So the Rabbanan at least stepped in again and said, chashuv is not batal. Okay? And that it is true that there is such a concept. We're not making that up. But the question is, what's called davar chashuv? An egg is an egg a davar chashuv? Like your dog's thumb and ring, right? Your wife would let you leave the egg in the garbage probably if it fell in, right? For us it's not davar chashuv, but again, we can't use our mentality to determine, because maybe in the old days an egg was very chashuv. So the point is, they have a way of determining this rule that the Rabbanan made, that if it's a davar chashuv, it's not batal, so it would be similar to davar sheish l'materim in that respect, if it's really true. So that definition of what's called davar chashuv is, again, the Rabbanan had made that decision, right? So it turns out that there's different opinions as to what is that davar chashuv that's not batal, okay? So is an egg a davar chashuv that won't be batal? Is that what the pshat in our Mishnah is?
It must be too hard to say that, Pshat.
What?
If you say
what?
Our Mishnah talking about an egg is chashuv.
Well, again, it wouldn't be because this egg is made out of gold or something like that. Now no one says we're talking about a special egg that's chashuv. It's either that in their day and age they considered eggs chashuv or they didn't consider eggs chashuv. Okay? That's the question that the Gemara is going to try to tackle right now. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, the Gemara is going to give two different ways of learning a Mishnah in Orla, I think it is. Okay, just one second. I think it's a Mishnah in Orla. Okay, so be prepared now. We're going a bit of a journey, okay? We're going to end up going into a Mishnah in Orla, because this question of bittul, by the way, is a question that could come up anywhere in Shas, right? Anytime you have something that's asur, or could be asur, you have this question, will bittul work? So many Mishnayos in Shas talk about bittul, right? Bittul is a very popular subject in Shas, okay? So it happens to be that there's a Mishnah in Orla that discusses when something's batul and when it's not batul, okay? And it's according to certain girsos in that Mishnah in Orla, we could say an egg is a davar chashuv and not batul, or we might say it's not a davar chashuv, depending on the girsa. Okay? So just like we found, there are questions in the Gemara that are determined by the girsa. Sometimes Rashi will say the girsa has to be a certain way to understand the Gemara properly, etc. There is questions even amongst the Tanoim and the Amoraim, what's the girsa in a Mishnah, right?
Yeah.
That becomes a question. So the Gemara here reveals that there's a machlokes in this particular Mishnah in Orla, which has to do with bittul and has to do with our subject of chashuv. And it turns out the way the Gemara is learning, it'll really depend on how your girsa is, whether an egg could be considered chashuv or not. Okay?
Yep.
Because that Mishnah in Orla, there's a bit of an indication of how it looks at a davar chashuv. If you look at it a certain way, an egg will fit into that definition. If you look at it a slightly different way, an egg might not fit into that discussion. Okay? But what the Gemara is going to be saying is that according to one of the two pshatim in davar chashuv, an egg fits into that, then it's very good. You could say we're talking about a suffix treifa. That's why suffix treifa is asur. That's a suffix to reis l'chumra. So the third halacha makes sense. Right?
Yeah.
And the fourth halacha that says we're not going to do bittul, which you said now, if you're talking about suffix treifa, it doesn't make sense. We said, but if it's a davar chashuv, it would make sense. That's why the Bryce is telling you you're not allowed to eat it, even if it's batal amongst 1,000. There's no din bittul because it's too chashuv, an egg's chashuv. But that will depend on the girsa in the Mishnah in Orla. Okay? So that's what the Gemara is going to say. According to one of the two definitions of that Mishnah in Orla, egg would be chashuv and it wouldn't be batal. So the Bryce would make sense. Yes, if it falls into 1,000, it'll be usher because there's no bittul. because it's a davar chashuv. But according to the other Manda Omer over there in Orla, who says that you read a slightly different girsa, and according to that girsa, an egg would not be considered chashuv, then we're still back to square one. Because why does our Brisa say that if the egg fell into 1,000, it's not batal? Why not? It's not a davar chashuv. It should have been batal, and it's not davar sheishul material because it's something trick. So that's how the Gemara is trying to go now. According to one shot that it's a davar chashuv, we can understand the Brisa. Why the Brisa says it's not batal amongst Aleph. But according to the other one, the other Manda Omer in the Mishnah in Orla, that would seem to indicate that an egg would not be a davar chashuv, and why isn't it batal? Okay, you get it? So we're about to go into that Mishnah in Orla, so you have to kind of readjust your...
Say whether it is batal or not, right?
The Mishnah says not. So the Brisa we've been dealing with says not. If it fell into 1,000, it's still usher. That means there's no bittul. We're trying to figure out why. So we have a few options. If it's talking about the egg that was no b'yom tov, good, because then it's a davar sheishul material. We understand why it's not batal. But if it's talking about, like you wanted to say, that it switched subjects in the middle, now it's talking about suffix treifa, that's not a davar sheishul material. It should have been batal. Why isn't it batal? Why does the Brisa say it's not batal? So then we say, but there's another thing about bittul that you forgot, that it depends on whether it's a davar chashuv or not. So according to that, we could possibly say the egg is a davar chashuv, and that's why it's not batal. But there's problem is, there's an opinion, according to that girsa, another the alternate girsa in Orla, that an egg would not be considered a davar chashuv. So then we're back to square one, so then why isn't it batal? Right, so we keep having these problems. It's like, according to one opinion, everything's fine, but according to the other opinion, we're still in trouble. So we want it to be good according to everyone. Right? That seems to be the Gemara's goal. We like everyone to be happy.
Yeah.
Everyone should be a happy camper.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so now you should just brace yourself. We're about to go into this new subject, which has to do with Orla. But, you know, it's not so hard because we already know that it has to do with bittul, etc. Okay? So now, the Gemara does another one of these bishleimas, but instead of saying bishleima, it says teinach, hanecha, which is the same thing, basically. So hanecha,
It's all good.
Lamanda Omer, according to the opinion.
Rosh manos.
Okay, now, this is what I was telling you before. There's a girsa. Okay, where the girsa says anything kol shedarko limanos, which its way is to be counted. Okay,
Yeah.
then according to that girsa, there's a Mishnah in Orla with that girsa that's saying it's not batal. Right? Anything that's way is to be counted is not batal. What's that like saying? That if it's counted, if it's a thing that's counted, then it's considered chashuv and not batal. Okay?
Anything that's where to be counted.
Now, let's just remember, I'm sure you even had this experience when you go shopping. Some things you buy by the unit,
Yes.
and some things you buy by the weight.
Chicken and wait.
So it turns out that let's say I have a number of things, but I do it by weight. That means I don't really consider each one chashuv. It's the weight of all of them together that I'm going to talk about when I have to pay. So I'm not really giving chashivas to each individual one. Whereas if I sell it by the unit, every single one is a chashuv thing that I have to pay for. So that's in a sense saying that the way, one of the ways to determine that something's a davar chashuv and not batal is how is it sold or how is it bought. If it's bought by weight, then the individual, each individual one is not chashuv. So therefore it should be batal. But if it's something that's counted, then I know each one is chashuv. That's the idea of counting. This one's chashuv, this one's chashuv, this one's chashuv, each one's chashuv. So there is a Mishnah in Orla that says anything that's derech is to be counted. is not batal. Okay? Now, it turns out in this area that we're now discussing that I'm going to decide that something is chashuv based on the way it's bought or sold. If it's bought or sold by weight, it's not chashuv. If it's bought or sold by unit, then it is chashuv. Each one is chashuv. That's the idea of a unit, right? So then it turns out that I have to look at that particular fact. Is it sold by weight or is it sold by unit? To try to determine in a situation of bittul if I'm allowed to use bittul or not. Because if it's sold by weight, then I can use bittul because it's not a davar chashuv. But if it's sold by number, then I can't use bittul because it's a davar chashuv. Bittul doesn't work on a davar chashuv. Okay? Yeah. Now, within that need to determine that, I have one more factor, which is called the gray area, where sometimes something is sold by weight and sometimes it's sold by unit. Then it becomes a bit funny. How do I look at it?
Why do they sell chickens by weight?
Probably because if they sold it by unit, they'd have to figure out each one, because each one they feed a certain amount, it costs a certain amount. If it's bigger, they probably fed it more, and so forth. So they want to be able to charge more for the bigger. They charge it by the unit. How are they going to charge more for the bigger?
Yeah.
They charge by the weight. It all adds up. So the point is like this. If I have something that we said is sold by weight, and it falls into something, whatever, I need bittul to make it mutter, I can use bittul. Why? Because if it's sold by weight, it's not a davar chashuv.
No, you account each one altogether.
What?
If you account each one separately, it's all counted together.
If it's weight, you never counted them at all. You're just weighing it. There's no counting, right? But if it's counted, each one is chashuv, we're saying. And it wouldn't help bittul. Because bittul doesn't help on davar chashuv. But what if it's somewhere in the middle? It's sometimes counted and sometimes weighed. Then what do I do? So, that's why we care about this girsa. Because the girsa will say, if it's always if it's always counted, there's one girsa that's like saying, if it's always counted, then it's a davar chashuv. But if it's only sometimes, then it's not a davar chashuv. Okay, you get it?
Yeah.
The two girsas that we're about to see, which one of them is kol shadar kalimanos, and there's another girsa of mi. Es shadar kalimanos. Okay? You see those two in the Gemara there? It says hanech lamanda omer kol shadar kalimanos shenina. It will go well. But lamanda omer es shadar kalimanos my ikalamin. Right? In other words, there's a difference between kol shadar kalimanos and es shadar kalimanos. Can you hear that difference?
Kol shadar kalimanos.
If I tell you anything that's weight is being to be counted will not be batal, or if I tell you the one that is counted is not batal, you hear a bit of a difference there?
Yeah.
So it turns out, if I'm correct, I mean, we'll have to see in Rosh, but I think it's saying like this. Eggs, okay, let's say, how do you buy your eggs?
You buy them, sold them in a box.
And then that box is how many?
30.
So you're really buying it by the unit. You didn't realize that, but you're buying it by the unit.
Yeah.
30 eggs for such and such. Okay, let's say one of them is broken, or you open it up, it's missing one. Pay less. Okay? So you're paying by the unit. But in the olden days, it turns out that eggs were sometimes sold like that, by the unit. So many eggs, whatever, per shekel. And sometimes they were sold by weight. Right? They just say, okay, a kilo of eggs, please. Right? You don't do that today. But in their day, there were apparently some people who did. So eggs were somewhere on the borderline. Okay?
Just need to go to the bathroom.
Want to turn it off?
Yeah. Okay.
Right, sir. So we have these two girsos. Okay, you have to look at each one and try to think of it as a writer. What would you write if you wanted to picture something that's only counted, or something that's sometimes counted, but sometimes also not counted? So look at the two girsos. They're one line after another. The word says, Hanechel amando omer kol shadark limanos. Okay? Anything that's way is counted, turns out that's going to be more implying what? It's sometimes counted. Its way is to be sometimes counted. Get it? But, the Gemara says, Lamanda Omer Es Shadark Limanos. Just takes one word. Instead of Kol Shadarko, Es Shadarko. The word Es is a very specific word. Right?
Es Shadarko.
Use the word Es when you're doing something specific. Ani Makeh Et Hashulchan. It's specific. I'm doing something directly to that. Et is more like a specific. I think that's how the Gemara is learning. So if you say Kol, anything that is even sometimes derech to be counted, then eggs would be considered what? Because they're sometimes counted and sometimes not. But if you say kol, that means anything that is even sometimes counted, meaning its derech is to be sometimes counted, then it's a davar chashuv. Then it would make sense in our brisa why ifila ba'elef, what? Lo batul. Because it's a davar chashuv. To become a davar chashuv, did it have to be only counted all the time, or even just some of the time counted? According to the gears of kol, it's saying anything that is even sometimes counted is a davar chashuv and not batul. You get it?
Yes.
But Lamanda Omer, that what? Es shadarko, specifically that which its way is to be counted, meaning it's only counted, then eggs would be what? Would be considered a davar chashuv or not? Are they always counted? In their day, were they only counted? No, they were also sometimes weighed out. So then you couldn't say that an egg is a davar chashuv, because the definition of davar chashuv is es shadarku, something that's only counted. You get it?
Yeah.
So that's going to make all the difference. The Gemara says, if you read the girsa of kol shadarku limanos is a davar chashuv and not batul, then an egg would fit that. An egg would be qualified as a davar chashuv. And that's why our Bryson would say it's not batul. Good. But according to the other mandomer in Orla, in how to read the Mishnah in Orla, who says the girsa is es shadarko limanos, it has to be something that specifically its way is to be counted, meaning all the time and no other way, then an egg would not qualify as a davar chashuv. Then we're back to square one with our brisa. Why did the brisa say that it's not batul? Because it's not something that's only counted. Therefore, why is it called? It's not called a davar chashuv according to that, and it should be batul. It should be able to be batul. So why does our brisa say it's not batul, even amongst 1,000? That's the general way that this Gemara is going. You get the general gist? Then we'll have to actually see the Mishnah. Then the Gemara is going to say, okay, well, let's look at the Mishnah in Orla. We've been talking about the two different girsas, but it's good to know where they fit in. They fit into a Mishnah in Orla.
I mean, sometimes only something that's been weighed is counted.
Again, if you say, what's not, that Mishnah is talking about something that's not batul, because it's a davar chashuv, right?
Yeah.
So, if you read one girsa, you know what it tells you? Something that's chashuv and not batul is something that's es shadarko limanos. That's specific. The es. It's like saying that is its only way to be counted. Then we'd have to say egg is not a davar chashuv, because it's not only counted. Then we'd have a problem with our brisa. Why is it not batul? And our brisa should be not a davar chashuv, according to that girsa in Orla. But if you read the other girsa, kol is like a very expansive word.
Batul, right? Is batul or not batul?
Again, don't think of batul till you've already determined that it either is a davar chashuv or not a davar chashuv. Okay? That Mishnah is telling you something that's not batul. You know why it's not batal? Because it's chashuv. But when it defines what's chashuv, it either uses kol shadarka limanos or es shadarka. So that's what we have to think about now. That little phrase is telling you what is chashuv, and therefore not batal. Or if it doesn't fit into it, then it's not chashuv and it should be batal. But those three words are supposed to define what is chashuv. Okay? That is what those three words are supposed to define. We'll see them in the Bryce. In the Gemara will bring the Mishnah and Orla. We'll see how it fits into the Mishnah and Orla. But that is really what's going on in the Gemara. The Gemara understands these three words are critical. Because however you read these three words, that is going to be your definition of davar chashuv. That's not batal, right? Because that's what the Mishnah and Orla is telling you. This thing, whatever it is not batal. So it's either telling you es shadarka limanos is not batal, or kol shadarka limanos is not batal. But either way, it's telling you something that's a davar chashuv is not batal. Now the only question is, what is a davar chashuv? So it has to do with what if it's counted. We know that. Something that's counted, generally speaking, is considered chashuv, right?
Yes.
But is it something that's only counted? That's what's chashuv? Or something that's sometimes counted. So you see, people generally do give it chashivas because it's sometimes counted.
This means sometimes, right?
So I'm thinking that the word es is more specific. Specific means it's only counted. Es dark. It's like laser beam. Es.
So what is special and specific? What is special forces, for example?
What?
What are special forces?
Special
forces.
Where are you getting special
So
forces?
specific, right? Special ones.
Where is this coming from? Where are you talking
So
about?
it's specific.
Saw it written somewhere, special forces? I don't get it.
No, because it's specific. It's specific only this, right?
Again, S is generally a very specific word. Right? When you describe an action happening S, you're like saying this fist went directly S the shulchan, right into the shulchan, nowhere else. Didn't go anywhere else. Very specific, right? Like think of like it's almost like the English word at, right? He spoke at me. Like a person got up. We had today a speaker right in Yeshiva. Who was he speaking to? Everyone. Some people sometimes feel like a speaker speaking right to them. You ever feel like that? Speaker speaking just to me. Right? Sometimes it's scary. You think, oh my gosh, he knows everything about me. How do you know? Right? But it's usually just because we're paranoid. It's not really true. But sometimes it feels like that. It's, everybody has had that feeling sometime or other. That's specific. That's S. It's like at. He's speaking right at me. At. Okay? You know that all the languages come from Hebrew, so it's not far-fetched to say that words we find in English come from a Hebrew word. But at least, even if it's not true, it helps you remember it. Et and at. It's almost the same word. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, what I'm saying is like this. If you have the gears of et, it's specific. That means this thing is only counted. Et shadarko limonos. That thing which is only counted. That means I have an object that there's no other way to buy it in the store. You always have to buy it by the unit. They never just weigh out 100 of them. Or weigh out a whole bunch of them. They never weigh it out. Right?
Yes.
So if that's the definition of a davar chashuv, that means I can only call something a davar chashuv if it's only sold by unit. That would mean I can only call it a davar chashuv if that's the only way it's sold, is by counting, by number, by unit. Like today, eggs are only sold by unit. There's no other way to buy eggs today. You can't just say I'll buy a kilo of eggs. Now we'll look at you like, here's a key to the loony bin. Don't jump in, Okay? Because today, it's et. Today, that's what eggs are. Okay? So today, there will be no shaila. Eggs are a davar chashuv, according to everyone. But in those days, eggs were sometimes sold by weight as well. So now it really depends on the girsa. If you have the girsa of et, that a davar chashuv is only something that is specifically sold by unit only, exclusively, like today, then in those days, an egg would not have qualified as a davar chashuv. Because many people sold eggs in those days by weight, a kilo of eggs. Okay?
It's very hard to imagine.
Have you ever been to the shuk and you buy peaches by weight? You buy apples by weight?
Yes.
Why not eggs by weight? They look like an apple to me. They're round and pretty. Well, why wouldn't we sell it by weight? Imagine there's a somewhere in the world where they sell apples only by the unit. They would never weigh it out. Weigh an apple? So then you say, but that's the way we live all the time. We only sell it by weight. We never sell it by unit. You ever see someone say 12 apples for $1? Never. 12 eggs, yes. So eggs are treated differently, okay? Eggs are treated differently, but the truth is, there's no reason really, if you think about it, right, why it should be that. Unless you say, because to sell apples by weight, you just throw them all into a bag and throw them onto it, they're not going to break. But maybe since eggs are very delicate, it's very hard to sell it by weight because you can't just throw them all in a bag and throw them onto the scale. They'll all break. So they decided to sell it by unit. Maybe that's why today there's such a thing. I don't know. Whatever it is, maybe because every egg, we know the mother works on it. She prepares it the day before. The Gemara said she's working on it. When the egg comes out, it's a davar chashuv. Whereas apples, there's like 30 apples on the tree at one time. The tree didn't really have to work so hard for those, did it? Doesn't look like it. But that mother had to really work hard on that egg. Right? The Gemara says 24 hours before it's born, it's already starting to formulate. The mother's really working on it. She worked hard on each egg. It's chashuv. Who knows? Okay? But, for our purposes, and this
How come the eggs we don't get not born with chickens inside of them?
What?
How come the eggs we don't have chickens inside of them? Usually
They're not fertilized, they have to be fertilized. Just like a woman, lahavdil. If she doesn't fertilize her egg, it comes out as a period. When a woman has a period, it's her egg getting washed away because it wasn't fertilized.
Right.
It's not fertilized.
So how do they make it not fertilized?
They keep, I think, one of the ways they keep the male chickens out of the coop. Men being around has a bad effect on these things. They get fertilized very easily if the roosters are around. Or maybe they take them so quickly, you don't have time to fertilize. I don't know. Go talk to someone in Tanuva. Or there's a guy who comes around selling in Telston. Does he come up the hill as well? Chasson? Little guy? Chasson?
I've seen him around.
Yeah, we buy from him. He's a very good guy. To ask him, how do you guys make sure? It makes a big difference too, by the way, halachically, because if you know for sure there was no men around, you see a red dot, theoretically you could eat it. Because it's not real blood, not the blood of an animal that's forming, because it can't. Anyway, okay, back to the subject at hand. Okay? So our Gemara has a problem. The Brisa said this particular egg, whatever egg we're talking about, is not button, even amongst 1,000. Right? We're trying to figure out why. So we said it really does depend on what we said before. Which kind of egg are we talking about? An egg that was born on Yom Tov, that was one option. The beginning of the Brisa was for sure talking about that. And then maybe we switched to talking about a base of treifa, which could make a difference as well. Whether we say it's batel or not batel. We said if it's talking about a base of shenol to be Yom Tov, and that's the question, then it's a davar sheyeshel matirim. We understand why it's not batel. Filo b'alef lo batel, right? But if it's talking about a base of treifa, why shouldn't it be batel? So we said maybe because there's another rule in bittul. You know what the other rule in bittul is? If it's a davar chashuv, it's not batel. And maybe this Brisa is looking at the egg as a davar chashuv. Why would you say an egg is a davar chashuv, not a diamond ring? Because there's a Mishnah in the Orla that seems to indicate that if it's something that's counted, if it's a thing which is counted and it's sold as a unit, that's enough to be called what? a davar chashuv, and it won't be batal.
And something itself on the unit is chashuv.
That's right. That shows that each one is chashuv. That's why by selling it as a unit, you're making a declaration that each one is chashuv. You have one more, you'll pay more. You have one less, you'll pay less. Each one is chashuv. Right?
Yeah.
So that seems to be clear. That if it's really counted, it's a davar chashuv, and it's not batal. That's the Mishnah Orla. But how exactly do you define a davar chashuv? By being counted. So that depends on the girsa. If you have a girsa of kol shadarkali manos, then you say it's enough to be counted some of the time to be a davar chashuv. An egg is counted some of the time, so it would be a davar chashuv.
Yeah.
So that would explain why the Brisa says it's not batal.
Something is a davar shesh.
It's a davar chashuv. By which definition, if you say kol, you're saying even if it's just sometimes counted, its way is to be even sometimes counted, then it's a davar chashuv. If that's true, then we understand why our egg and our bryce is not batal.
Sometimes, right?
If you say kol, then you're saying it's enough to be just sometimes counted to be a davar chashuv. It's like saying anything that is ever counted is chashuv. Well, an egg is sometimes counted, it should be davar chashuv. Then we understand why it's not batal, why the Brisa says it's not batal. You're making a declaration that anything which is even sometimes counted is a davar chashuv and not batal.
It is sometimes counted. This is not batal, right?
Well, again, if it's a davar chashuv, we know the rule, it's not batal. And our job right now is to determine is an egg a davar chashuv or not. And it turns out it makes a difference which girsa you have in the Mishnah in Orla. If you have the girsa of kol, what does that imply? Anything that is even sometimes counted is going to be called what? A davar chashuv. And then obviously if it's a davar chashuv it will be batal. And then it turns out that according to that an egg would be a davar chashuv. Why? Because an egg is one of those things that's sometimes counted.
Yes.
But if you say es shadarkali manos is a davar chashuv, then it has to be something that's specifically counted all the time, and not only some of the time.
Yes.
Then an egg, which is not always counted, sometimes in those days it was sometimes weighed, sometimes counted,
It's not chashuv.
would not be a davar chashuv and would yes be batal. Get it?
Yes.
So let's read it inside.
The kol means that sometimes the counted is considered davar chashuv, but it is.
Therefore an egg would qualify as a davar
Well, it's
chashuv.
not batal.
And that's why we'd understand the Brisa to be telling us it's not batal.
Yes.
But if you said es, that's implying what's a davar chashuv? Something that's exclusively counted. And an egg, in their day at least, was not exclusively counted. So by definition, an egg would not be a davar chashuv in their day, and the Brisa would not have been allowed to say it's not batal. It should have yes been batal.
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah.
Let's see it in the inside. The Gemara says, Hanecha, first word on the line, Hanecha, everything will go well. According to the man that says what? That we learned in the Mishnah in Orla, that what is called a davar chashuv that's not batal, kol shadarkali manos, anything that even what? Sometimes is counted. Then we'd understand what? Why in our Brisa the egg is not batal, because it is sometimes counted, therefore it is a davar chashuv and it's not batal. Ella, but Shaninu, if you learn in the Mishnah in Orla, the Girs of es, Shadarka Limanos, that what is a Davar Chashuv? Only if it's S Shadarka Limanos, that it's specifically what counted and only counted, and that's what's a Davar Chashuv. Then an egg in their day would not have been qualified as a Davar Chashuv. Why? Because an egg in their day was not exclusively counted when it was sold. It was sometimes counted, but sometimes weighed.
Yep.
Therefore, why did our Brisa say an egg is not batal? It should have been batal. It's not a Davar Chashuv. So my Ika Lememar, what can you say? So we have a problem according to that Mandomer. Why did our Brisa say it's not batal? Now, the Gemara wants to take a break. Okay, isn't that nice? The Gemara wants to take a break in order to do what? To bring the Mishnah and Orla that we've been promising you, right? Everything's been Es Shadarko, Kol Shadarko. It's like, it's all out of context. The Gemara now wants to fill in the context. To tell you, oh, you know what? All that business of Kol Shadarko, Es Shadarko, you know where that came from? A Mishnah in Orla. Now we'll show you the Mishnah in Orla.
Now continue.
Would you like to see the Mishnah in Orla, or would you like to see it next time?
We should see it next time.
Okay. But then you better review what we've done very, very well, so we can actually start with the Mishnah in Orla, and you won't be like, huh, I don't remember any of this. Okay?
Alright, thank you.
All right. Turn on.